Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Comstock channel. I'm Marlin Bohling with you. Thank you so much for joining us. We love talking with you about ag issues, and be sure to like this video, subscribe to it, hit that bell icon down below so you can get notified when we have new updates, and share this video with others as well. Well, I want to welcome aboard to the program. We have Veronica Nigh with us right now. And right off the top, Veronica, first of all, congratulations. You have a new title right now. And I guess I have known you for numerous years through my work at RFD TV, and you were with the American Farm Bureau Federation, and now it's like both you and I have had career changes here in the last few months.
Mhm.
And if you would, go ahead and take a moment and get us updated on where you are now. What are you doing anyway?
Sure. As you mentioned, I was with American Farm Bureau for 12 years, wonderful organization. But the opportunity presented itself to come over and be the senior economist here at the Fertilizer Institute, which is the trade organization in the United States that represents the producers, retailers of fertilizer in the United States. So I've been here since mid-December, and certainly enjoying a new challenge, an exciting industry, and looking forward to talking about agriculture in a different way.
Well, this year probably is a lot better than what we had maybe a year or two ago when there was a real hard time getting enough fertilizer for farmers. Here in the U.S., once that Ukrainian war broke out, I mean, there was a real bottleneck, the way it seemed, in getting fertilizer out of, well, let's call it the Black Sea region in general. This year seems to be a lot better. The supply isn't as hard to come by, right?
Well, I think what was interesting is, yes, we certainly saw increases in prices, significant increases in prices in 2021 and 22. But really, you had to back up a little bit further. The industry got rocked really by COVID, as a lot of industries did. And I think one of the interesting things about fertilizer is it's truly a global industry. About 90% of nutrient use is outside of the United States. And so a lot of the analysts thought that when 2020, when COVID hit, that fertilizer demand would decrease fairly significantly. And instead, what happened is fertilizer demand increased by 5%. So anytime you have a directional difference, even if it's a couple of percentage points, you can really have a mismatch between supply and demand. So we kind of started in 2020 at this disadvantaged position, and demand was significant. We go into 21 and we start having additional supply chain issues, as the rest of the country does, as well as the rest of the world did, frankly, with regards to shipping and availability. And then we got into 2022, as you mentioned, and Russia invaded Ukraine. And I think the fertilizer markets traded very similarly to grain markets, in that the markets kind of behaved as if none of the product that was coming out of that region would be available to the market any longer. So we started trading at this, as if 15% of corn availability was gone, at 20% of or 25% of wheat was going to be missing from the market. On the fertilizer side, Russia is a big player in all three of the major nutrients. And when you start thinking about those, that product being unavailable, prices certainly responded. And then you have these, on the political side, different countries were willing to trade with Russia, others weren't. So you kind of got this market bifurcation happening. And we're now moving into 2024. Of course, unfortunately, the Ukraine situation is still unfolding. We're 2 years in to that unfortunate situation, but the market's starting to find its way a bit more. So that product is not missing from the market. It's finding different channels. But you still have this very interesting thing going on in the market, that those who are willing to trade with Russia, and frankly, those countries that Russia is willing to trade with, that's kind of a two-way street. Those countries have different availability and different prices than maybe those countries that, like the United States, like the EU, that maybe have a more acrimonious relationship with Russia. So, on the nitrogen side, things are quite a lot better. We produce most of the nitrogen we consume in the U.S., but when you move into the other two major nutrients, the P and the K, if you will, those are a lot more susceptible to changes in global markets because of where those nutrients are mined. So a lot of interesting things still happening, but the prices and availability looking a little bit more like 2021 rather than 22, 23.
There was so much price volatility a year ago in the fertilizer market. It seems like things have really pretty much stabilized for this spring anyway, right?
Well, yes, and as soon as I say yes, tomorrow things will change dramatically, and I will find a target on my forehead, and maybe deservedly so. Prospective Plantings comes out. That has a significant impact on the fertilizer market. Almost 50% of fertilizer demand in the United States is attributable to corn. So when we have significant changes in plantings, that certainly has an impact not only on total usage, but which particular products end up being used. So yes, things are significantly smoother than maybe they were last year, and we hope that stays the case.
That being said, there was, of course, a big event that occurred as we get toward the end of March here. It was that cargo ship that hit that bridge in the Baltimore Harbor. Boy, I tell you what, that was a catastrophic event. Had some loss of life, of course, in that, but that's going to be a while before they can sort that all out. Now, I've been hearing from different sources that maybe that was one of the main avenues of bringing fertilizer into the country. And I just wondered, from your perspective, what have you been able to gather from your standpoint there? Is it that big of a player when it comes to bringing fertilizer into the U.S.? And is it going to cause much in the way of ripple effects from the way you look at it?
Yes and no. There's certainly potential for there to be an impact. But on the surface, Baltimore is only about 1 to 2% each year of total fertilizer imports. Certainly, New Orleans is a much larger player, and a couple of other ports are significantly larger players. That being said, if you are sourcing product out of the Port of Baltimore for your local area or a specialized product, it could certainly have an impact. When we look at what fertilizers are actually coming in through Baltimore, the majority of it is nitrogen, and the majority of it is from Russia. So if you're getting nitrogen fertilizer from Russia, this could have the potential to have a significant impact. And I think the thing that is to me has been the most interesting about the fertilizer markets as I'm learning more about them is understanding how tight these markets actually are. So, I mentioned 90% of fertilizer use is outside of the United States, but particularly on nitrogen, most countries or most regions are consuming what they produce. So about 90% of production is consumed in region. That means that if you have you have a 3 million more corn acres, or you have a drought as we've had, then have trouble getting product upriver, if you have a catastrophic weather event that shuts down production even for a short amount of time, it can leave you short on product for the right place at the right time, which is oftentimes a recipe to go to import product. But when we look at how tight the global market is, that means that the whole world is chasing about 10% of total production. So certainly if you get into that situation where imports are harder to come by, you can have that can have a significant impact on the market, even though it's a fairly small percentage of total use, because the entire world is chasing that sort of residual 10% of nitrogen production. And I think we saw that back in 22 in particular. Again, going back to the unfortunate Russia situation, the Russians really increased the cost of natural gas to the Europeans. Of course, the cost of natural gas is about 60-70% of the cost of producing nitrogen fertilizer. So a lot of the European producers, frankly, just had to shut down production because they were unable to sell the fertilizer for an amount that would cover their costs. So that meant those growers were out there in that global market trying to gobble up that 10% that was available. And then we saw global prices increase as a result of that.
I wonder if maybe a bigger problem might actually have been the water levels, like on the Mississippi, or maybe even the Panama Canal. I mean, they have restricted shipping through the canal too. You can't carry as much tonnage anymore, either on barges or on ships going through the canal. And that's still an ongoing problem, right?
Absolutely. One of the things that I said often when I was at Farm Bureau was that Mother Nature is an important but terrible business partner. And we have Mother Nature as a business partner as well in the fertilizer industry. A lot of our product comes in through New Orleans and makes its way up the river on those barges that originally make their way down the river carrying grain. They take fertilizer back up. So absolutely, as we're looking at lower water levels, that means you can't load those barges as heavy as you would otherwise like to be able to. That increases the transportation cost. And as we think about how agriculture has changed maybe in the last 20 years, we certainly see that the number of growers has declined. The size of farms has increased. And that oftentimes means that that fertilizer demand is not occurring over maybe a 6-week period when there were, say, 100 growers in a region. Maybe now it's over a 3-week period and it's 70 growers. So that demand is much more concentrated. So that makes it all the more challenging when you have trouble getting product to market. Not that it's not available, but you have trouble physically transporting the product from point A to the point where it's actually needed in a much more narrow period of time. So that's certainly something that we keep an eye on. We will join farmers everywhere in doing rain dances where it helps, and dancing the opposite direction when we need it to stop raining.
Well, I guess the good news is when you look at 2024, as we are getting well into it now, you don't foresee any problems with supply availability in any certain parts of the U.S. For now, it looks like we're in pretty good shape.
We're in pretty good shape. Absolutely. We went through the winter season without too many significant weather events that shut down production at facilities for any significant length of time. That has been an issue in the last couple of years. You'll remember the ice storm that hit Texas a couple of years ago, which had a significant impact on fertilizer production. We didn't see too many of those type of events this year. So, as we're looking at production data from our members as it comes in, at this point, things look like we're going to have a good spring. That production has been continuing throughout the winter at a normal to slightly elevated level.
Well, fingers crossed. Let's hope it stays that way.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for the update. And again, congratulations on the new job, and I appreciate the update on what's going on in your new capacity at the Fertilizer Institute. I enjoyed talking with you again.
Absolutely. It's nice to see you, and hopefully we'll see each other again soon.
I hope so. Thank you for the update, and I'll call on you sometime if we start having more snafus in the supply chain here this coming year.
Perfect.
Veronica Nigh with us from the Fertilizer Institute. She is based in Arlington, Virginia. That'll do it for this episode of the Comstock Report in the Comstock channel. For producer Brianne Hendrickson, I'm Marlin Bohling. Have a good one. I'll catch you next time. Thanks for joining us on our Comstock YouTube channel. Don't forget you can also find us on Facebook and TikTok as well. Futures trading involves risk. The risk of loss in trading futures and/or options is substantial, and each investor and/or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results.